Good afternoon, morning, depending on where you are, and welcome to the 3DHP for the Nation Interest Group Meeting. We appreciate you being with us today. Smaller crowd than usual, but I think we can, with summertime, that's to be expected. So, with that said, as most of you know, this is a cooperative with USGS, and this is our final project year. This was for 4 option years, and that'll end December 31st, and a new project proposal is in development, so hopefully things will continue. As you also probably know, if you've come here before, this is the interest group meeting. We replaced the 3DHP Info Forums 2 to 3 times annually. So the third Wednesday of each month from 3 to 4:30, you can bank on us being there, except for this month when we moved it by a week. So I just negated myself. The forums are generally 3DHP topic focused, and the interest group meetings are sort of project and participant activity focused. So that's, for those of you that are confused as to why we're having one or the other, that's the approach. Today we're going to get an update from the USGS 3DHP program. We'll talk a little bit about not just NSGIC, I should just say conference activities coming up, 3DHP conference activities. And then, of course, our primary discussion will be on looking good practices. And with that, I will turn it over to Sue Buto.
Thank you, Linda. I appreciate you giving us the opportunity to give you guys an update. So it's going to be a little bit acquisition focused. Neither Steve or Sylvia could join us today, so it's going to be all about me this time. So I'll start out with status of data acquisition in Alaska. I think as many of you know, the USGS Alaska Map Modernization funding is largely funding this effort. And we are planning at the moment to have a little bit over 72,000 square miles collected in Alaska. I think we're on track. I want to say our Alaska program manager is suggesting fiscal year 28 or 29. We should have all of Alaska either available or in progress with 3DHP. Next slide. There it is. And I'm pleased to announce, after the delay, thank you for those of you participating for your patience. The delay in getting out our DCA selectees this year. We are now on track to collect at least 103 or so thousand square miles in the continental US, both through federal partnership acquisitions and through the DCA, and you can see the listing of states here that applied for and were selected for DCA projects. I will note for you guys, I know most of you are aware that we have a pretty limited budget for partnership projects, but we were able to take on some previous 3DEP funding that was targeted to the Great Lakes states this year to develop some fairly substantial partnerships, as you can see in Michigan and Ohio. And so that's why you see those fairly large projects, even though we have ostensibly a very small budget. And I also want to thank NRCS for their assistance with cost sharing with us on some of these projects. So I will say thank you all who applied and are moving forward with projects. It's kind of exciting to see this map fill in even just a little bit. Next slide, please. So speaking of the DCA for FY24, the DCA officially closed on June 1st. And we are working on standing up the fiscal year 25 DCA. I'll note for 24, we have a list of selected projects on the DCA portal. We have scheduled the instructional webinar for the FY25 DCA for August 7th, and registration just opened up today on the DCA portal. Excuse me, I put the link there. There's a link to a registration to a Teams webinar. And I just lost screen share. Linda, are you still there?
I think Linda dropped off the call.
She might have gotten booted off. Okay. Let me see. We'll give her just a minute to hopefully get back. And in the meantime, I'll just babble on. So with respect to the DCA, we are tentatively planning to open the DCA in early to mid-August. We'll give you more details as soon as we know them. And we'll update that DCA portal with more information and all the forms and maps, et cetera, that you need to do the project proposals as soon as we have that information available. There you are. Hi, Linda.
My Zoom controls completely froze up, so, but we're back. I'm glad you guys didn't get lost. Okay.
Well done. Can you go back one slide? I think. There we go. We're still talking about that. And I will say, Tara Mano, you have your hand up. Did you have a question?
Tara, feel
I don't
free
know
to
that I
go.
did.
There you go.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, if you do, let me know. Okay, next slide. And I'm also pleased to note that we are slowly but surely getting our 3D hydrography program or terrestrial hydrography federal priorities up on C-Sketch. And I think many of you have been asking, or a lot of the NSGIC community has been asking for this. It's a little sparse right now. Some of our federal agencies haven't worked up their services to do this yet, but we're working on them. Hopefully, and fingers crossed, we'll see Forest Service come up very soon. But you can see that NRCS and USGS have our priority mapping areas on C-Sketch already. So I'll put that link in the chat as well for anybody who doesn't have that link. We will also make the shape files of our federal agency priorities available through the DCA. So you can have a shape file of the data as you're looking at project areas and what federal agencies may have overlapping interest in your areas. Okay, next slide. I think this is the last one. We're very pleased to say that the 3D National Topography Model Call for Action Part 1, which is focused on the 3D hydrography program, has been finally published. It's been a long time coming. We've been working with our publication unit for quite a while to get this out. The focus of this is, of course, the 3D hydrography program and the 9 revision to completely remap our nation's surface water with elevation derived hydrography put into the 3DHP data set. And the link is there, and that's another one. We'll put our link in the chat when we get a chance. So with that, I think that's the last slide. Is that right, Linda?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Are there any questions for you guys?
I see Josh has a question in the chat, Sue.
Oh, okay. Let me find that. Estimated closing date, it will close, I suspect, around June 1st. Again, Josh, we keep it open for a pretty long time, particularly for the 3DEP side of the house that they have quite a bit of funding. So it'll go from whenever we open it to June 1st. Hopefully that answers.
So June 1st, 2025?
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Eric?
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah, I just want to say, it's a comment, not a question. We had a meeting with our local NRCS, and when Drew Lane got on, the thing he said that sticks in my mind is you can't go wrong with 3DHP.
Yay for that.
Yay for
I
that.
think you've got a new motto, Sue.
I like it. Yeah.
That's what he told us about thinking about it, spending somebody else's money. You can't go wrong with 3DHP.
Well, that's nice to hear, Eric. I'm happy to hear that, and we have had great support from NRCS and the use cases. I think Pennsylvania is a great example of that. So that's very good to hear. I think we should make t-shirts, Josh. Let's do that.
All right, any other questions for Sue? All right, thank you very much, Sue. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
So, anybody want a conference? I think we've got a few coming up. So first of all, I wanted to talk about some 3DHP activities at the ESRI user conference in a couple of weeks here, a few weeks here. And anybody wants to jump in and elaborate on these? Josh is going to be participating along with Eric and Joel in the pre-conference workshop. Josh, did you want to say something about that?
Only that if you can participate, it's a fantastic workshop. It's been going on for something like 30 years, and it's a great way to catch up with people in a smaller setting when most of the UC is overwhelmingly large numbers of people. So that's probably all I could say. We've been doing these California, Washington. I thought there were a couple other states who might be doing quick presentations, but we've been kind of just doing updates at that time.
Sue, I'm going to back up real fast. Paul has a question in the chat about Corps of Engineers, whether they put their interest areas in C-Sketch.
We asked for interest areas for Corps of Engineers this year, Paul, but I don't think we got any from them. I'll have to go back and double check. They are members of our working group and have shown interest, but I don't know if they've organized to get those interest areas into C-Sketch yet.
Thank you. So when we get back to the ESRI conference, there is going to be a GIS and 3DHP session in which both Eric and Joel from California and Sam and Brian from Tennessee will be presenting. That'll be Tuesday. There is a hydrography stewards lunch meet up. Again, Josh, I'll throw the registration link in the chat if you want to just mention that address that real fast.
Yeah, this is just a kind of an informal gathering that Jane from the Steward for California and I started 3 years ago as an opportunity for people to chat face to face. This will be our third one. There's a lunch, but we have to say how many people are going to be showing up ahead of time. So if you are looking to have a lunch, please follow that registration link. And we focus mostly on the stewards or people who are managing hydrography, but anyone is welcome. So look forward to seeing you there. And I will say real quickly, if I can, thanks to our sponsors. That's how we were able to have, well, one, thank you to NSGIC, who is kind of the parent organization of our group, but also thank you to our sponsors, NV5, Dewberry, Sanborn, and Wolpert, who are helping us provide lunch for everyone.
Thank you, Josh. Sue, you're going to be presenting on Thursday. You want to give us a brief explanation of what's going to happen?
Sure. I think it'll be a program overview. Many of you are very familiar with, but also a little bit more detail on where we are with 3DHP and sort of some things that are happening with the data model, etc. I'm going to steal liberally from Sylvia Terziotti's AWRA presentation, which was very good.
Thank you. And so also, if you're not aware, there's a NSGIC reception Wednesday night. If you do want to attend, please respond to John at his email address. Lindsay, did you want to say anything about that reception?
Nope, other than we hope we see you all there.
All right, well, if you're going to ESRI, please just screen capture this screen so you have that information. Now let's talk a little bit about the NSGIC annual conference. Right now, registration is open. Early bird by July 27th and standard before August 30th. The call for abstracts is open, and that's open until July 26th. I just want to make sure you guys are aware there are multiple options. There's flash, standard, extended, and on demand. So if you feel like you just have a little bit of something to say, or you would like to do something that's a little bit more a video style presentation, there are options available. Thanks to the program committee, this has been a nice being able to have everything things other than the standard. We will, of course, be having the 3D NTM Data Acquisition Management Planning Workshop Monday morning, September 23rd, 8 to 10:30. We'll open that registration in August, but please, if you're planning on attending the conference, please consider coming in early on coming in on Sunday so that you'd be available at 8 a.m. Monday for 3D NTM. We'll have the data for the nation breakout breakfast. We've requested Tuesday morning. That's tentative. No confirmation on that yet. We'll probably submit an abstract since this is the 4th year of the project on our achievements and products that are available, just to bring those outside the community aware of what we've been doing and what resources they might be able to access. And USGS is in the process of developing, and I shouldn't have said this, so you can correct me, some form of 3DHP panel that will have some level of state involvement. Is that a fair thing to say?
That is a fair thing to say, and suitably vague for where I'm at with that.
Very
Yeah, I
good.
would like to do a panel with some of the state folks.
That's great. Also, and this is all just as Sue says, it's what norming, informing, gelling. There is a possible we're trying to come up with some sort of 3DHP offsite activity for the non-golfers on Tuesday afternoon. If you're 3DHP and you're not really going to go golf, we thought we could use that time to get together and do something informative and fun. I mean, we're just, if you have ideas, let me know. I thought we'd all get on the riverboat and play I Spy hydro features or a 3DHP feature type scavenger hunt. How about a main stem identifier picnic? So you can see where this is going. So if you have interest, you should probably chime in and derail me before it goes too far. Yes, Jane, thank you for that update on the, if you guys will look in the chat, Jane's added a link to the hydrography stewards meeting and the notes there. And Mark has ideas for our outing, so we'll figure it out. Yeah, crawl, a hydro crawl. So any questions about what's happening at conferences? Anything anybody else would like to add if I didn't get your information in here? All right, with that, we'll get into the discussion. And I need you guys' input, so chime in here. So as most of you know, we've been working on Culvert Mapping Good Practices for over a year. And why are we, and so these are excerpts from the guidance document. I also want to do a quick disclaimer. I am in no way a culvert mapping nor a hydrography data expert. So my role here is to facilitate discussions, and I'm going to depend on each of you to provide expertise as relevant. And since Sylvia and Steve were too afraid to come to, had other obligations today, we'll ferret through. I will take good, copious notes and we will move forward, but this thing needs to be completed. It's been sitting out there for quite a long time. So with that said, we open up the document with why a set of good practices. And we all know that having culvert and other elevation breach connecting information is fundamental to modeling the flow of water across the landscape. We did do a NSGIC 3DHP FTN survey, and we found lots of activities and all very independent activities. And that link is going to be, a link to that survey is in the document. So we've thought that there was an opportunity or a need to identify culvert mapping practices that support data applications and modeling efforts that cross administrative boundaries so we can use one another's data. And anybody can jump in at any time. You'll see I'll have little bullets where I want you guys, I have specific questions for you, but if you have a comment or anything, throw it in the chat or or just come off of mute. So this was a challenge. Again, I'm not a culvert mapping expert, and I am learning a lot about what is a culvert. So for purposes of the guide, we're considering a culvert is a transverse drain that channels water past or under an obstacle. They are engineered features often located at the intersection of a stream with a road, railroad, drive, or trail. Hydrography feature, according to the specification, a culvert is a hydrography feature below a transportation feature. And in 3DHP, the feature type will be elevation breaching connector. Steve from Vermont had a comment. Is this guidance relevant to short bridges? And I've had brief discussions with USGS, but this has not been fully vetted. And the understanding is that while those features are needed for hydro enforcement, the guidance is limited to the mapping of culvert features, mostly because of the attributes we've selected. We wanted a core set of attributes, and if we include short bridges, then some of those attributes don't become relevant. And if Steve, I see Steve's on the call, if he wants to comment or elaborate on that, or if anybody has any questions or comments about what a culvert is or isn't.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Thanks, Linda. No, I just, here in Vermont, we have a variety of different data sets that represent these features, and there's not a lot of consistency between, short bridges and culverts, and it would be nice if we could either build that into the data model or map them separately, just because they are very different in nature, where, a culvert could be represented as a line feature, but maybe some of these short bridges might be better represented as even a polygon feature. For when you do the hydro enforcement, I don't know if we're not necessarily going to be altering the DEM directly through this, but in the event that we want to do more detailed hydrological modeling, it would be nice to have bridge or short bridges as polygons, so we could actually clip out those pixels that is very representative of the canal itself. Whereas, with a culvert feature, we could have a line feature with a dimensions and potentially buffer that. And I'm just thinking about how we, now that we have this really high resolution bare earth model, how do we really drill into the detailed hydrological modeling on maybe like a finer scale? And it seems like drilling into these the difference between culverts and short bridges might be of value there. But I understand that it's complicated, just the nature of these features and how they're currently represented in a variety of different geometry types in a variety of different data sets. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you're one step beyond us when it comes to the implementation and the data model. This is purely about states inventorying their culverts. It's a first step. Sue, did you want to say anything about data model or how this will be integrated, or are we good?
I think we're good, other than to, remind people that for the purposes of the 3DHP, these will all be generic elevation breaching connectors. And then that way, states and entities can have maps that they can, overlay on 3DHP or link to 3DHP that have all this other rich information. So perhaps there is another step in here for, other types of transportation breaches or that maybe should be considered over time.
Thank you. Any other comments on what is a culvert and what isn't?
I'll caveat that I'm not an expert either, but I get where Steve is going on this. And to me, it seems like the differentiation is how the LiDAR processing treats that structure. So if the structure is removed from the surface, then you don't need to enforce the hydro through it. If it isn't, and it's a terrain breach, then it will show up in 3DHP and it will be achieved. And it really doesn't matter if it's a culvert or a small bridge. It depends more on how the LiDAR processing treats that feature. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thanks, Josh. Yeah, I'm starting to appreciate the difference between, 3DHP focused on connectivity of these networks, where, you don't need to necessarily, we're not editing the pixels, we're just trying to connect drainage features. So that does make sense.
Correct. Yeah, correct. Great. Thank you.
We include a section on statewide coordination. And one of the issues that came up through the survey is a lot of times these culvert mapping efforts are focused on a specific agency mission. That could be transportation infrastructure management, fisheries management, stormwater management, etc. So as a result, the data may not be shared beyond that agency, and the data may not be applicable to other organizations. It may be they're just collecting what they need for what they do. So again, statewide coordination to sort of focus on a core set of attributes would be very valuable. And so you're asked to consider at the state level to lead coordination at the highest level that your resource capabilities will permit. So, at one level, you could develop and promote culvert mapping practices. A step down from that would be, can you manage an inventory of existing not a step down, but manage an inventory of existing culvert mapping efforts just so people know what's happening. Maybe beyond that, can you compile a line and distribute the data that was developed independently? And heck, can you lead a statewide culvert mapping project? So the idea is that, based on where you are in this process and your resources, there are multiple levels to plug in for state coordination to happen. Any questions, comments? We'll get to the attributes. That's where you guys care. And getting back to Steve's discussion about polygons and lines, that lines are the greatest value as they can be integrated into the 3DHP mainstreams model network. And they best support hydrologic and hydraulic modeling. While we do recognize that culverts may actually be mapped as polygons or points, perhaps if it is a polygon, centerline could be derived. And when you do, and the geographic feature being a line, it should be attributed as far as like inflow and outflow. Susan, please.
Hi there. My name's Susan, and I'm from New Mexico. We do have a lot of culvert features in GIS, but they are points. And so when you say lines, I do want lines because I want to connect the dots. But do you think that we would be able to use point features if that doesn't happen?
How you use the data is completely, your call. That's again beyond the scope of what we're trying to achieve here. But my understanding as a non-expert is that if you do want to do modeling, flow analysis, things like that, that the line feature is going to be necessary. Anybody else want to respond to Susan's question?
Hi, Susan. This is Steve from Vermont. After some conversations with people, it seems like those culvert points are going to be most useful as a reference layer for digitizing lines. It's, you haven't found the silver bullet to automate the conversion of those points to the lines with the positional accuracy that they need, but they can certainly be used as a reference layer.
All right. Well, thank you. Good comments. Thank you.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Steve. All right.
Yeah, this is Eric Jesperson from Pennsylvania. I just wondering about consistency. We say inflow, outflow, upstream, downstream. Probably ought to be consistent in the way we think about it.
Yeah, well, now good timing. We're going to talk about the attributes. We actually are proposing a core set of attributes, and I think hopefully, Eric, we can use your input here. So for one, with the 3DHP model, it's as you all are well aware, it is a simplified attribute schema, and it just provides the infrastructure, and then users can hang their user-specific feature attributes. They can associate them with the mainstream data model, and you can do that through you can do that through the Internet of Water using the GeoConnect system that they manage. And so you can go in and find any main stem or any reach and add your own attributes. So there's nothing here to limit people from what they need in their culvert data. But we thought but the objective is a minimal set of universal attributes and that's really going to facilitate application of the data across administrative boundaries. So we've come up with a very small set, and we're going to look at them individually. And the whole purpose of this effort is to work with state GIS coordinators and hydrography coordinators to implement these attributes. So here they are listed, and then we'll talk about them specifically. But if you want to take a quick look, I thought I'd give you the big picture. It's basically the identifier, information about who maintains the organizer, unique identifier, field verification status, and we talk about, Eric, this will get you upstream endpoint, downstream endpoint, and then elevation, width, height, and the materials. So we'll look at these in a little bit more detail, and this is really where I'm hoping we have some discussion. So the first attribute is the main stem identifier, and I don't want to read this to you, and I don't know if Sue, are you comfortable talking about what the identifier? I love just picking on people without preparing them. Addressing what the main stem identifier is and how people would identify that via their attribute label.
Well, comfortable is a relative term. It's still a little fuzzy for me to explain, but I will say that the main stem identifier, the idea of a main stem identifier and how it will be implemented in 3DHP is that this is now a persistent identifier from headwaters to outlet for any river feature that is persistent across data sets. So if you're using the NHD plus medium resolution, the main stem identifier for the 3DHP is the same identifier. So you can kind of cross data sets on this. And different from reach codes, it is a same identifier for a feature, again, from headwaters to outlet, as opposed to sort of individual reach codes that also were tied to the watershed boundary data set, which turned out to be kind of a problem to maintain. So hopefully that helps. I can give you a link to a blog post that Dave Blodgett did that probably explains it more cogently than I just did.
Yeah, there is a link that points to you. And again, this is information where Sylvia's been a real help on this, obviously, Terziati. And so my understanding is that that attribute value will either be a GeoConnects feature URL, again, going through Internet of Water, and it'll be available through Internet of Water, or it's a GeoJSON encoding reference. And I cannot elaborate beyond that. But I'm sure we will provide additional guidance as it is available. Is anybody aware of other mainstream, other ways of identifying or other values or attributes that can be used as a main stem identifier? All right, well, we got the tough one out of the way. And again, I'm going to keep repeating this. The objective here is to minimize. We don't want to overburden people with common attributes. So when it comes to the maintenance organization, at a minimum, we'd like the name of the organization that maintains the culvert, and we would like an email address for the point of contact. These are not required. If you don't have an email address or a point of contact, you know, it's not like you're not going to meet the good practices, but to have that would be useful. Is there other information about the organization that maintains the culvert that you think is needed? And this is organization information.
Hello, this is Susan in New Mexico. And
yes.
Of course, we would love to know maintenance. We just spoke with a maintenance operator or folks in the field. They know if the culvert is flooding on a regular basis, if it's silt on a regular basis, or what is going on and what is needed at that particular crossing.
Okay,
So,
something to consider. Go ahead.
It's like comments and flooding, frequency of flooding.
Okay, so comments on how the culvert's functioning.
Yeah, functionality. Yeah.
Good addition. we
Hi,
can,
this is Karen from West Virginia. The material of the culvert is very useful, especially if it's a maintenance crew going out to fix it, so they have the proper tools to be able to fix the culvert if they are doing maintenance or anything of that nature.
yeah, you're jumping ahead on me here.
Sorry.
That is one of the features that we have, but right now I'm just trying to find out what we need to know about the organization itself.
Linda,
Yes.
this is Garth from Rhode Island. I know we don't talk a lot of many of these. The ability to add a website for the agency, and I only say this because one of the things that's come up with us with some of our stuff is as people leave agencies, that kind of goes, things kind of disappear. But if, you know, in addition to a name and email address, if, you know, say it was Rhode Island Department of Transportation, but then this one particular office within it, if we're able to put a website in there, then, you know, if that person's name or email doesn't work, hopefully the website will take us to to a new point of contact, if that makes sense.
Yes, I do want to emphasize that the name is not the name of the point of contact. The organization name is the name of the organization. And we'll make that.
Oh, gotcha. But yeah, I mean, I guess.
But
I
a
don't know.
website, I see where the usefulness of that.
Yeah.
I see Mitch is posting in the Mitch, do you want to come on and talk about main stem ID? Because I'd be happy to back up.
Sure. The main stem ID is really the crux of the 3DHP data model, and it will allow any data set, any hydro data set, to connect to that framework. The 3DHP framework will be the foundation for the Internet of Water. So it would be a jumping off point within the Internet of Water from navigating a main stem. Show me all your culverts, show me all your short bridges, show me all your water chemistry values, show me your stream gauges, those kind of things. It's going to be where you hitch data to the framework of 3DHP, and it will be via that main stem identifier. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. Sean Scholler, I will get back to your question. We'll get back to it later on. Again, this is really focusing on what these attributes are, and we can come back to your question about the actual implementation of 3DHP and the DM resolution in a little bit.
That's fine. Thanks.
Sean.
Yep.
And Jane, I will jump back to your question as well. I really want to focus on the attributes right now, but I think what you all are asking is relevant to good practices. So we're also asking for a unique identifier for the feature. It's either identifier that's either created by the maintenance organization or some global authority, and this is really critical to the association of information about that feature. Again, I threw discussion points in here just asking folks, but are there other sources rather than the maintenance organization or the global authority? I know one of the things we talked about was the use of object ID, but that is not permanent in its nature, and it is duplicated among data sets, so that really doesn't work as far as a feature identifier.
Linda, is this meant to be unique across the entire nation or unique for that organization?
Across the nation, it needs to be a unique,
That seems like it could be challenging to make sure that people are not reusing. There'd have to be some kind of system so that people are not duplicating the IDs unless USGS is willing to create a unique ID on the 3DHP feature.
I think the answer to that would be probably no. There might be a.
I thought you might say that, Sue.
I mean, there'll be the main SIM ID and then there'll be a 3DHP ID, but I don't believe the 3DHP ID is actually persistent.
No, it isn't.
Yeah.
So I have a question then maybe for Mitch. In the when you do the main stem ID and it shows up in that Internet of Water, is there a location? I mean, would there be a unique ID for records going into that Internet of Water as well that we could tap off of, or?
I don't think that is fully developed yet, but that is
Okay.
the idea, you know, thinking of, you know, Steve Achel's example of, I live on this road and I'm hungry and I want a hamburger, right? The framework of the roads and linking hamburger locations to that allows people to jump off into, you know, individual restaurant databases. And I know that might be a stretch, but that's the idea, that that main stem provides the flow line. And then from there, you know what's on that flow line, and it can link to outside external data sets.
Right. I do think this is a good one to flag, Linda, though, because this seems like it, to me, of all the data, it's pretty critical to have this unique ID.
Right, and you know, we have this discussion, I want to back up on my answer to you. We have this discussion at the federal level all the time. You know, what is, some people use a URL as a unique identifier. So it's really squishy. And so I think at some level it'll be left up to the judgment of the organization to provide as unique an identifier as they're capable. So,
Okay.
and
Gotcha.
Tara added the comment that, you know, you could take an ID and preface it with a state code or something like that. So if you had your own coding system in the state, you would just preface it with some code that, or with your state code, and that way it would avoid duplicate. So yeah, things to explore here. For right now, the general consensus is there should be an identifier for the feature. Maybe we should have taken unique out, but yeah, more, we can elaborate a bit more in the document there. Thank you. All right, field verification location, and thank you to Steve in Vermont for suggesting this, and that there's a box where you can check whether or not the location has been verified, yes or no, and whether the attributes have been verified, yes or no. This is the closest we could get to another suggestion was including data confidence, and this is as close as we felt like we could get at, you know, for a core set of attributes that are universally used, implemented. Eric, I think we're getting towards your questions. He's just having standardized verbiage. At this point, the conversation is that for each culvert line, there will be an upstream endpoint bottom elevation and a downstream endpoint bottom elevation. The suggestion is that we do feet to 100th decimal. Through our conversations and the survey and all we've done, feet seems to be the de facto standards for US elevation values. Would anybody like to disagree or suggest another approach here? All right, well, that seems acceptable. Another dimension then is, these are the last of the attributes: the culvert width, the culvert height, and the material. And we specify this as the widest horizontal measurement, the widest, maybe we should call that highest, but it's still the widest vertical measurement. And then the material, and we're going to specify the interior surface of the culvert. And we used, Mitch, thanks to you, the list of surface types that was provided by, we've got a list of resources. Who's the group that's doing all the culvert map, that is leading a lot of this discussion nationally? I can't think of the acronym. Anyhow, we're building off of existing standards here. Well, okay, I know this is not an easy environment to have this kind of conversation. Be nice if we're all in the same room, but I'll just go back up here, and again, this is what's in the document. The workspace has been out there for almost a year, so hopefully you've had a chance to go look at it. We have not, that could be it, Tara. I have to look at the document itself. It's got a list of resources in the back of it. This has been out there for a while, and so this is culling through the survey results. This is culling through, we had dialogues at the mid-year in 2023. This is what we came up to. Every culvert should have, you know, this kind of information, and this would not be a burden on the agencies to collect. Josh is suggesting we might need a datum. Add a question. We'll add that as well. Well, is there a datum we can fix on as part of the, Josh, I'll bring you off. Is there a datum we can fix on as part of, like, request that the elevation be provided in a specific datum? I mean,
I mean, we in Washington try and stick to one, but
not nationally.
you could, I don't know, like, I mean, you could put in NAVD 88 and just see if that works for people. And I'm not really very familiar with the new, I think it's the 2022 projection. I can't remember if that also has a vertical datum component. So you're getting to the edge of my knowledge.
I'm pretty sure that would be, this is Eric again. I'm pretty sure that it's the first chance that you get a vertical component in the North American Terrestrial Reference Frame from 2022. That it contains all three components. The NAVD 88 is only vertical.
All right. Well, so, go ahead, Eric.
But I'm thinking of local jurisdictions will be using whatever datum they do. You know, we're talking about.
So it's probably
maybe finding a way to get that. Yeah, you need to know what datum they're working in.
So have them specify the datum.
Translate to get a local authority's inventory or updates. It needs to be all the same. You need to know what they're working in and trying to get to.
All right. Does anybody see any glaring holes in this? And again, these are good practices. This is not a standard we're trying to develop here. We want something that is useful to communities. So
I do like the idea of having a website link that maybe goes to a state's database that would have additional information, but that could be optional.
Do you mean like the state's clearinghouse?
Well, it would be a little bit up to each state how they distribute, but ideally, if a state did have a standardized state culvert database that you could click to, then you could find a lot more information about that specific culvert if it was necessary.
So say that again for me.
And I'm stealing someone else's idea. I can't remember who it was that mentioned it, but just you have in 2 and 3, you have the organization and their email, but it doesn't seem like it would be too hard to add a website address that would get you close to a clearinghouse of culvert information from that organization.
All right, now again, that feature is who takes care of that particular culvert.
Correct.
Okay, and so
it might be the same, like if a state has a unified culvert database, then the link could go to that. If each organization maintains their own database for culverts, then it would go to that organization's either a web service or a page that talks about their culvert information, or however that would work.
All right, so if I'm understanding you correctly, you're really looking more of a link to that particular culvert mapping initiative, like where you can get more information about how that culvert was mapped by whom.
Correct. Or if they have a service that brings up culverts, and you could actually get the specific information about that culvert that they have.
Okay.
Like you're kind of saying almost like if so like in Rhode Island, DEM, they take care of the dams. So their dam reports also, you could link things back so that it's not just a point. Now you're potentially providing people with even more data.
Correct.
I like the way you think.
Because otherwise it'd be hard to find that.
All right. We have to think about this because I'm thinking about this as it's a feature, and we want to. This is more from an inventory standpoint. When you go out in the field to map this feature, or you do an automated process. Oh my gosh, did I leave the process slide out of here? I did, and Steve, I apologize for that. We did update the how to do your field data collection. And you know what? I'm going to switch over real fast to my document because I think that that's important.
Yes, I was lamenting the lack of that slide on how
I'm
how
sure
how the
just
feature was created.
and this is not pretty what I'm gonna show you because this is a work in progress. And I apologize for leaving this slide out. Let me get and I appreciate your patience, everyone. This is not the easiest thing to do. Okay.
Well, while Linda's working, this is Mitch Bergeson with USGS. I think one thing to remember is that, I think it would be a challenge to consolidate this data at a national level, find the resources to steward that. I think the more accurate way to think about it is a federated collection of databases.
Yes.
That each steward, each entity, each state, manages, but at least there's some commonality. So when and if it is rolled up and it's discoverable and can be rolled up, that there's some consistency across those.
Exactly. Thank you, Mitch. I'm going to just cheat a sheet here. Oh my gosh. I am dancing. And it's not letting me copy information into this. Copy. I see somebody has their hand up. Who had their hand? Oh, they took it down. All right, I'm going to be able to do this now. Do y'all remember the Gong Show when they used to go da 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 da? Okay, this is really rough, but and this is thanks to Jane and Steve for their comments, and again, thanks to them both because we didn't get a lot of response, so we were appreciative that they gave us this feedback. Let me make this a little smaller. Oh, my day. I'm trying to edit on the presentation slide. Excuse me. Okay. So basically, data collection section says that you're encouraged to use Culvert using high quality imagery, LiDAR derived elevation surface, and should be and. How many people have left? They're dropping like now. And a digital mapping application that incorporates GPS with a field data mapping template. So in other words, these are the primary tools. Jane and Steve, and I'll let Steve elaborate on that, suggested that using automated and semi-automated processes, it provides a very efficient method of both capturing the data and updating the data. And so as you can move towards those, that's going to be a better approach. And again, the use of the mobile data application is much preferred over hard copy forms where there's a chance to introduce error when you're transferring from hard copy. And again, map culverts using the best sources that best supports your needs and maximizes the use of your available resources, be it human or technical. However, it should be noted that adjustments to your culvert data may be necessary to hydro enforce the elevation data when it doesn't align with 3DHP LiDAR data. So I think this goes back a little bit, and Jane, I'm sorry I didn't address this earlier. You had a question about how this relates to you, and you're not really sure what your role is as the hydrography steward. Again, this is not anybody telling you you have to do anything. It's asking you, and we'll talk about this in a minute, it's asking you to, if you do culvert mapping, consider these best practices and also work with those in your state, regional businesses, whatever, who are doing culvert mapping and asking them to implement these best practices. I see lots of new messages. Clinton, it's tough visualizing the inventory. Is there a draft we can review? Well, this document's been, if the document itself has been out there for a year and a half. So we will send that, and you should have, we do have, I can send you that, but we have two versions right now. We have one that collected comments and one that we're vetting. So after today's call, we'll be adjusting that vetted document and sending that out to better. Sean asks, is culvert size better than culvert height? Well, we're trying to get both the two dimensions on the culvert. Sean, if you want to come off and.
Yeah, I didn't get a screenshot of all the attributes. I just remembered the attribute there, culvert height. I wasn't sure if that was height of like ground surface or if that was height as in size. Or
yeah, I'm jumping all over the place.
Sorry to make you back
no,
up.
this I appreciate. We want the input. What we asked for is
It was that list.
Horizontal measurement of the culvert and the widest vertical measurement of the culvert. So
Okay.
cross measures.
Okay. On the other slide, you had just a list of attributes. So I didn't remember seeing this. Okay. Yeah, this is very clear.
I'm sorry. The first one was sort of the big picture. That list of 13 was the big picture, and then each of these I should have explained. We're going through them one by one. So I realize I'm throwing a lot of stuff at you all, but you're,
all right.
That's why I keep saying your patience is appreciated. Lots of good questions in the chat about metadata and that sort of stuff. And again, I don't want to get scope creep on this. This is if you're going to do a mapping initiative for your culverts, can you make them lines and can you attribute them this way, or at least work with your companies? So I will go up real quickly. I want to thank again Jane and Steve for their comments. A couple of additional suggested attributes that we did not include, and I wanted to include the rationale and then see if you all, the data source type, to help understand if records are from existing data, an automated process, where did the data come from? And we were unsure about that because culture might be derived using multiple source types, and different culverts in the same data set might have used different sources. So we thought this may be beyond the minimal and universal objectives. However, if the community feels strong interest in this, we could come up with a fixed domain and allow people to to pick multiple. I just didn't know if the burden of doing that for each culvert might be excessive. Is this something that would truly be implemented and would be universal? Anybody really want this? Okay. Confidence and fully understand this, useful in determining which records should be field validated. Hopefully, few are going to have actual confidence measurements for their data, and so those field verification attributes, the location, and that one was yes, no was your location attributed. Field verified, and 2 were your attributes verified. We felt that was about as best. We added those, and we thought that was about as best as we could do to provide information about the field validation status without becoming burdensome. If there is strong interest in connecting this, we're going to need to refine. We're going to need to indicate what the confidence measure that is expected, and I know that doesn't have to be numeric. So hopefully, by adding those field verification values, we've got this one. And then finally, the feature type, which are linear and which are polygon. It seems to us that would be inherent in the data that's being attributed, because there's going to be a feature in the data set, and it will be a point line or a polygon. So I didn't know if anybody wanted to, if we were thinking about this wrong, if we misinterpreted the statement. Okay. So finally, what are we asking you to do? Or what are we going to do, and what are we asking you to do? We want to finalize the document. We'll take under consideration the notes made here today and make updates. We will then distribute the document via the 3DHP FTN Interest Group. It'll be published to the Info Hub. We'll share it with the federal 3DHP working group. If there are other organizations that we need to distribute it to, let us know. We will announce its publication at NSGIC Annual. I don't think we plan on having this level of discussion again. We've had 2 of these with the full community, and I think at this point it becomes a living document that can be amended as people use and apply it. Hopefully we'll add more information. And then finally, we want to develop some sort of, and I'm not sure what form this will be, some sort of guidance or an assistance to state GIS and hydrography coordinates in sharing and implementing the good practices. So Jane, this may touch to your question about, what are you supposed to do with all of this, or how does this matter to you? Any comments on those next steps, or how it applies to you, or thoughts on what kind of guidance we could give on implementing it? You guys put a lot of work in the survey that went into this, the review, the declaration. I don't want to just see it die on the vine someplace. How do we keep this thing alive?
Linda, this is Garth. I mean, it probably just sounds silly, but I guess just if we keep having conversations about it, I mean, kind of like the easiest answer, but I don't know, the more we talk about it and how it's progressing and how things are working, I think that helps keep everything alive. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And if we are able to continue the project next year, maybe we can just have a regular check-in or feature for, hey, has anybody used this and how have they used it and how did it work? Just keep checking in with the community on usage. I like that, Garth.
Yeah, because I know, like, in doing our stakeholder engagement, we were asking everybody how they were using some of the current stuff. So as this becomes available for people to look at, it might just keep it moving.
Again, and so as a state coordinator, and I'm asking this to you and other, whether it's a hydrography coordinator or geographic or GIS coordinator, what are thoughts? Is this something that you could promote to your regional governments or your regional utilities or your transportation department or whoever is doing the majority or some portion of your culvert mapping in your state? Are you comfortable in that role?
I mean, I can, for myself, I think so. I've already kind of been talking to our Department of Transportation about some of this type of stuff. So, because there's a need for it and everyone's trying to figure out a way to do it.
Yeah, this is Amy in Louisiana with DEQ. I totally feel comfortable sharing this with our DOTD folks. They are collecting culvert data. I think they've already begun, and we have representatives on the GIS Council. So we've discussed this, and I'm more than happy to bring this up repeatedly during those meetings as things change or develop in their collection efforts.
Thank you both. Others?
Hi, this is Taryn from West Virginia. As throughout my career, I had the privilege of working in utilities. So understanding that, and also understanding that the DOT and our DEP are the big collectors of our culvert data within the state. And I would feel 100% about talking to them about this and creating some of these standards and hopefully getting some more momentum behind that.
All right, thank you all very much. I appreciate it. Again, I know it's not an easy conversation to have on a hot summer day. Oh, Phil has his hand up. I'm sorry, Phil.
I was just going to mention under number 2, other, this ought to have at least a paragraph in the new planning guide and a link to it, because it's something people are going to have to address.
Okay, taken under advisement. All right. Any other questions, comments on what this is? What, Steve, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Just a comment on number 4 there and providing guidance, and the person from New Mexico touched on it, and something we're dealing with here is we have a lot of good culvert data. And I understand that you can automate these breach lines using geomorphons. I'm not certain what that workflow is, but my understanding is that it can be done. So I'd be curious to learn about guidance on, how to automate, if at all possible, because again, we do have a lot of existing culvert data. If we could leverage that into an automated process that can place new lines in the right places, and then we conflate and we incorporate this new data model. Any kind of guidance I'd be very interested in.
I think that's going to be more of a community discussion and outreach, and maybe we can have a topic on that. But I think implementation is a little beyond, the scope of what we were trying to do here. Automated derivation, but as much information as we can get and include, I agree, that would be very useful.
And Linda, if I can hop in there too, I mean, the act of creating 3DHP will give you some good subset of where transportation crossings should be. Whether they're located accurately is another question. We'll have to work through that issue. But just the act of creating 3DHP shows you a lot of where those breaches should be.
Good point, Sue. As we get more familiar with the data, we're going to understand the capabilities.
Right.
Al's stated in the chat that they have developed tools in ArcHydro. Al, do you want to elaborate? Carlin?
Not really, but for but for those folks who want to come to the Sunday pre-meeting, we will be showing the tools off.
Okay, that's great. That's great. You'll be in that session on Sunday then. Excellent.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are at 4:08, and I would like, at least Eastern time. I want to thank you all, and I wanted to give you an opportunity. I know we're running a little short of time. Does anybody have any information they'd like to share? We like to use these interest group meetings to talk about both our successes and our challenges. So does anybody have anything? Again, this is your community to ask questions of, to share information. Anybody have anything they want to share or anything they want to ask their fellow 3DHP interest group members? I think you guys are tired.
This is Sean. If we could, if there is time to ask my question about the DEM resolution. But yeah, my question to the group is, is there a justification for increasing the resolution of the DEM, provided the LiDAR point cloud, supports the resolution? Yeah, is there a justification for hydrologic modeling or others to increase to, from 1 meter to 2 foot to 1 foot? We always keep on jumping, higher and higher resolutions. I get it for orthoimagery, for feature extraction and identification. What is it for elevation?
This is Amy with Louisiana DEQ. I suspect that's a use issue, dependent on the context, but for deriving hydrography in our state, I think for us it's more important to have the collection done on a watershed boundary basin or HUC boundary as one collection, as opposed to being done using a grid or a county parish boundary or something like that, so you have uniform time of collection. To me, that's a more important distinction resolution wise than the 1 meter or several feet, but we don't have any elevation here to speak of anyway, so.
And I can tell you from personal experience, that makes it all the more important, right, Amy?
Yeah, that's true.
2 inches matters a lot. Anybody else have a comment on Sean's question?
I'll just note, I don't know about necessarily the resolution question, and of course, chasing higher and higher resolution data, but the 3DHP is standardizing on a 1 meter resolution DEM created from the source DEM from the LiDAR or the OPR. So not trying to chase half-meter DEMs. We don't actually have LiDAR to that would support a half-meter DEM everywhere anyway.
So you said that's based on the 1 meter source?
Yeah, well, it's based on the source DEM or the OPR, the original product resolution. So that may be a half-meter DEM, but it gets sampled up to a 1 meter.
Okay.
So we have a standard 1 meter resolution for all the 3DHP hydrography. Except in Alaska. Or of course it's IFSAR, so it's 5 meters.
Al, I see your hands up again.
Yeah, I'll throw in my 2 cents. You got to remember, I came from, or I am in Florida, and I just published a paper in LiDAR magazine. I don't think the DEM size is as critical as the accuracy of the LiDAR. The paper that I just published pretty clearly demonstrates that QL1 data are really superior to QL2 data for hydrographic feature extraction. And it's particularly apparent in semi-urban areas. So that paper is in LiDAR magazine.
So that's based upon the increased resolution, not necessarily any difference in vertical accuracy.
No. It's based on difference in accuracy.
Sure.
And the spatial resolution, whether it's 1 meter or half a meter data, really don't matter.
Al, you don't have a link you can throw in the chat, do you?
I knew you were going to ask that. I've got like 20,000 screens open right now.
Yeah, you and me both. I was going to go search for it, but I thought you'll get there, Pat.
Yeah,
Thank you, Carlin.
It's in LiDAR magazine.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other anything you want to share with the community? Anybody else have something either that they're doing or that they want to know how they can do? Andy, Kylie, thank you.
Yep, you found it. Thank you.
All right. Kept you long here today. As I said earlier, 3rd Wednesday of the month. I hope you've got it penciled in on your calendar. There will be no July forum or interest group meeting due to both the Esri UC and everybody traveling. I am looking forward to August. We do have USGS coming to talk about the ABCs of XYZ, the spatial integration of hydrography and elevation data. And Sue, correct me, this are fellows from the actual NG Talk where the 3DHP is being developed.
That is correct. They are our workflow coordinators in our data validation unit in the National Geospatial Technical Operations Center. So they are boots on the ground folks talking to you about this stuff.
All right. Last call, questions, comments, raised hands, come off thing. Well, thank you all for bearing with us this afternoon. I know this was not an easy thing just to see this on slides. We will make some edits, maybe a few comments, and send the link out to the 3DHP Interest Group. If you're not a member of the 3DHP Interest Group, please join. You can get that by going to the NSGIC website and go to My NSGIC, and you can join the interest group, and then you'll be connected to this information. Again, we truly appreciate you. This is your community. These are your resources. And so the more you engage, the more the more useful we hope to be. So thank you all. Have fun in San Diego.
Thanks, Linda.
Thanks, Linda.